They were once the faces that lit up the silver screen, actors who poured their hearts into every scene, only to be forgotten when the spotlight dimmed. Their stories go beyond fame or fortune. They're tales of broken systems, lost legacies, and the cruel reality of how quickly Hollywood moves on. Today, we remember them, not for how they died, but for how brightly they lived. They graced red carpets, flashed dazzling smiles, and made the world laugh, cry, and believe through their art. Yet when the applause faded, so did their names, vanishing like the last glow of a Hollywood sunset. Now, let's dive into story number 5, one that might just leave you speechless. Stepin Fetchit, the rise and fall of Hollywood's first black millionaire. Before anyone ever dreamed of black Hollywood fame, there was Stepin Fetchit. Born Lincoln Perry, he broke barriers as the first black movie star, and the first to become a millionaire in Hollywood. In the 1920s and 30s, when America was deep in the Great Depression, Perry was living like royalty. Movies like Steamboat Round the Bend made him a household name, and his bank account soared while most people could barely put food on the table. But success came with a heavy price. Perry spent his fortune faster than he earned it: luxury cars, wild parties, designer suits, and mansions that screamed excess. He lived every day as if tomorrow would never come until it did. By 1945, the man who once swam in cash was nearly penniless. And then, Hollywood turned its back on him. The very roles that made him famous, those stereotypical, lazy characters, became his downfall. Critics called him a disgrace. Studios stopped calling. By 1947, he filed for bankruptcy. In his final years, the once golden star faded into silence. Forgotten by an industry he helped build, Lincoln Perry died in 1985, at 83, with little more than memories of what once was. From millionaire mansions to near poverty, his story is a haunting reminder: fame and fortune can vanish in the blink of an eye. Red Fox, the king of comedy who died penniless. Elizabeth, if you're looking down on all this, honey, don't look. Most people remember Red Fox as the grumpy junk dealer from Sanford and Son, the man who could make America laugh till it cried. In the 1970s, he was on top of the world, raking in serious money from his hit show and legendary stand-up performances. He lived large, flashy cars, fine clothes, endless parties. But there was one thing Red couldn't stand doing: paying taxes. For years, he treated IRS notices like junk mail. Big mistake. In 1989, Uncle Sam came knocking, and not politely. Agents raided his Las Vegas home, taking everything: his furniture, cars, even a diamond-studded watch Elvis Presley had personally given him. They stripped his life bare to pay off over $2.5 million in back taxes. Still, Red tried to bounce back. By 1991, he was filming a brand new sitcom, cracking jokes and bringing laughter to the set. Then, in the middle of a rehearsal, his heart gave out. Just like that, America lost one of its greatest comedians at 68 years old. The saddest part? Red Fox died broke, so broke he couldn't even afford his own funeral. His friend Eddie Murphy quietly stepped in and paid for everything, honoring the man who had paved the way for so many black entertainers. Red's story is more than a tragedy, it's a warning. No matter how famous you are, the IRS doesn't care about your punchlines. Pay your dues, handle your business, and never forget that fame fades, but responsibility never does. Gary Coleman. Remember that charming little boy from Different Strokes who made the world laugh with the line, "What you talkin' 'bout, Willis?" That was Gary Coleman, the child star who lit up every TV screen in America. Behind that smile, though, was a story far darker than anyone imagined. At the height of his fame in the 1980s, Gary was one of the highest-paid kids in Hollywood, earning around $100,000 per episode, more than most adults made in an entire year. By the time he was a teenager, he'd made roughly $18 million. But while he was busy entertaining millions, the adults around him, his parents and managers, were quietly draining his fortune. When the dust settled, Gary was left with only $220,000 to his name. The rest had vanished. He fought back in court and won part of what he was owed, but the victory was hollow. The industry that once adored him had turned its back. Roles stopped coming and Gary, once a household name, found himself selling personal items just to pay for his medical expenses. Born with lifelong kidney problems, his health declined as the bills piled up. By the time he passed away in 2010, at only 42 years old, Gary Coleman was $70,000 in debt. A tragic ending for a man who once had the world at his feet. His story isn't just about fame lost, it's about trust betrayed. A child who should have been set for life was instead left with nothing but memories and scars. Gary's life remains a painful reminder that sometimes, the people closest to you can be the ones who break you the most. Dorothy Dandridge. I love you. That gives me no right to own you. There's only one who does, and that's me. Dorothy Dandridge wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. With a voice that could melt hearts and a presence that demanded attention, she became the first black woman ever nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress in 1954 for Carmen Jones. In an era when Hollywood closed its doors to women who looked like her, Dorothy kicked them wide open. She could sing, she could act, and she had that rare kind of grace that made everyone stop and stare. In the 1950s, she wasn't just a star, she was Hollywood royalty. But while the spotlight made her shine, behind it her life was quietly unraveling. Her managers stole from her, siphoning away $150,000 of her hard-earned money. The government came next, demanding $139,000 in back taxes she couldn't pay. The woman once dressed in diamonds was forced to file for bankruptcy after a disastrous oil investment. She lost her home, her fortune, and her dignity, and worst of all, she could no longer afford to care for her special needs daughter. The pain of having to place her child in a state institution broke her heart in ways fame never could. By the mid-1960s, the golden girl of Carmen Jones was living alone in a small apartment, drowning in alcohol and despair. On September 8, 1965, Dorothy Dandridge's brilliant light went out forever at just 42 years old, penniless, heartbroken, and forgotten by the industry she once helped change. Yet her legacy remains, a tragic reminder of how Hollywood can crown you a queen one day and leave you to fade in silence the next. Sammy Davis Jr., the star who danced with fortune and lost. Hi there, sailor. New in town? That playful line captured the spirit of Sammy Davis Jr., a man who could charm the world with just a wink and a smile. He wasn't just an entertainer, he was the entertainer. Sammy could sing, dance, act, and hold a room in the palm of his hand. As a proud member of the legendary Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, he was Hollywood royalty, lighting up films like Ocean's 11 and stages across the globe. During his glittering career, Sammy earned an estimated $50 million, an enormous sum at the time. But behind the applause and the spotlight was a man addicted to extravagance. He adored luxury the way others loved applause. The fast cars, the diamond rings, the wild parties, and the risky investments. If it glittered, Sammy had to have it. Then came the IRS. Like many stars, Sammy wasn't exactly disciplined when it came to taxes. When cancer took him in 1990, the truth was brutal. He owed over $5.2 million to the government. With penalties and interest, the debt swelled to $7 million. His estate, worth only about $4 million, couldn't even scratch the surface. In the cruelest twist, Sammy's widow had to auction off nearly everything, from his prized jewelry to his stage costumes, just to settle the bills. Friends like Quincy Jones stepped in, organizing benefit concerts to ease the burden. Imagine that. A man who once headlined the world's biggest stages reduced to charity events after his death. Sammy Davis Jr.'s life is a cautionary tale wrapped in sequins and jazz, proof that even the brightest stars can burn through their fortune faster than fame itself. He didn't just live large, he spent himself into legend. Ethel Waters, the voice that broke barriers but couldn't escape the blues. Petunia, is this really you? Yes. But not the same me who used to break my back, bustin' suds over a washtub for you. That powerful line came from a woman who refused to be defined by limits. Ethel Waters was more than a performer, she was a pioneer. From the 1920s through the 1950s, she dominated Broadway, lit up concert halls, and made history in Hollywood. She even earned an Oscar nomination for Pinky, a rare and remarkable achievement for a black woman of her time. But behind the spotlight was a woman with a heart far bigger than her bank account. Ethel's generosity knew no bounds. She helped struggling friends, family members, and anyone who knocked on her door. Yet, that same kindness would one day cost her everything. By the mid-1950s, the IRS had become her greatest enemy. Years of unpaid taxes, stretching back to 1942, piled up until the government began seizing her performance royalties. Imagine working your entire life, only to see your hard-earned money vanish before it ever touched your hands. Despite once earning fortunes from her stage and screen success, Ethel's open heart and open wallet left her penniless. In her 60s, she was no longer the glamorous star America adored. Her health failed, heart disease, kidney problems, cancer, and diabetes took their toll. Medical bills drained what little she had left. In her final years, this trailblazer of music and film lived quietly in a tiny apartment, later taken in by a kind couple when she could no longer care for herself. When Ethel Waters passed away in 1977 at the age of 80, the woman who broke racial barriers and sang her way into history left this world with almost nothing. Her story is both inspiring and heartbreaking, a reminder that while generosity is noble, we must also protect our own future. Because as Ethel's life proved, you can't pour from an empty cup, and even the brightest lights can fade if they burn themselves out for everyone else. Charles Sidney Gilpin, a name that once echoed across Broadway with pride and power. In 1920, he stunned audiences in The Emperor Jones, delivering a performance so magnetic that critics raved, theatergoers couldn't stop talking, and even President Harding took notice. Gilpin wasn't just another actor, he was the pioneer, breaking barriers for black performers in an era that refused to see their brilliance. But greatness often comes at a cost. Behind the applause, Charles stood firm on his principles. He clashed with playwright Eugene O'Neill over the racist language in the script, demanding respect for his people and his craft. That bold stand, righteous yet risky, cost him dearly. In a world where silence kept doors open, Gilpin chose dignity, and the theater world turned its back. As the 1920s faded, so did his opportunities. Roles that honored his talent were nowhere to be found. The industry offered only stereotypes and humiliation. Charles refused to bend, even when the price was hunger. Work vanished. Money ran out. The stage lights dimmed. He took odd jobs, running elevators, training boxers, anything to survive. Imagine that, a man once celebrated by presidents, now invisible in the city that once cheered his name. By 1929, illness stole his voice, the very gift that had carried him to glory. A year later, at just 52, Charles Sidney Gilpin died of cancer, penniless and forgotten. His final resting place? An unmarked grave. No applause. No curtain call. Just silence. Yet his courage to demand respect in a world built to deny it remains one of the bravest acts in theater history. Bill "Bojangles" Robinson, the king who danced his fortune away. Now you just watched. I went to the market to get some beef, and the beef's so tough I couldn't get enough. That was Bill Robinson, smooth, witty, and born to perform. Known to the world as Bojangles, he wasn't just a tap dancer, he was the tap dancer, the man who turned rhythm into poetry. Robinson lit up the screen in classics like The Little Colonel alongside Shirley Temple and Stormy Weather, mesmerizing audiences with every step. At the height of his fame, Bill was one of the highest-paid black entertainers in America, earning millions during a time when such success was almost unheard of. But behind the fame and applause lay two fatal weaknesses, an open heart and a gambler's soul. He couldn't say no to anyone in need. He paid rent for struggling artists, cleared debts for friends, and gave away money as if it grew on trees. His kindness was legendary, but it also became his undoing. Then came the gambling. Horses, cards, dice. If luck was involved, Bill was in. For every dollar he made, two seemed to slip away at the gaming table. No matter how high he climbed, the money never stayed. As the entertainment world evolved and new faces took the spotlight, Bill found himself performing smaller shows for smaller crowds. The big checks stopped coming, but his generosity and habits didn't. When he passed away from heart failure in 1949 at the age of 71, Bill Robinson, the man who once danced across America's biggest stages, had nothing left. No savings, no investments, not even enough for his own funeral. It was his dear friend Ed Sullivan who paid for the service. And yet, in death, Bill's spirit proved richer than ever. Over 500,000 people lined the streets of New York City to say goodbye. He may have died penniless, but Bill Bojangles Robinson left behind something no amount of money could buy: joy, rhythm, and a legacy that still dances through time. Hattie McDaniel, the woman who made history but died forgotten by the system. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel broke through Hollywood's color line, becoming the first African American to ever win an Academy Award. Her unforgettable role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind earned her that golden statue, and a place in history that no one could erase. Through the 1930s and 1940s, Hattie was everywhere, acting in films, performing on radio, bringing life and laughter wherever she went. But behind the fame was a woman with a heart too big for her own good. She could never say no to those in need. Relatives, struggling actors, friends down on their luck, she helped them all. Her kindness was legendary, but it drained her finances. Worse still, Hollywood refused to let her grow. No matter how talented she was, the industry only saw her as a maid or servant. They kept her boxed in, underpaid, and underestimated. When cancer took her life in 1952, Hattie McDaniel, the woman who broke Hollywood's most powerful barrier, died nearly penniless. Her estate was worth less than $10,000, and she owed the IRS even more than that. She died with negative money. And the tragedy didn't stop there. Everything she owned, even her historic Oscar, was sold off to pay her debts. That priceless piece of history ended up at Howard University, only to be lost for decades. It wasn't until 2023, more than 70 years later, that the Academy finally replaced her missing Oscar, restoring a piece of the dignity she was always denied in life. Hattie McDaniel shattered walls that others were too afraid to touch. She gave everything: her talent, her money, her pride, and all she asked for was respect. History may have forgotten her wealth, but it will never forget her worth. Butterfly McQueen, the name that still echoes from her unforgettable role as Prissy in Gone with the Wind. That high, trembling voice saying, "I don't know nothin' 'bout birth-in babies," became iconic, but the woman behind it lived a life far deeper and braver than Hollywood ever showed. Unlike so many who chased the spotlight, Butterfly made a bold choice. She walked away from it. She refused to keep playing the same tired, demeaning maid roles that defined black women on screen. In a time when few dared to say no, she did. It was an act of pride, and it cost her everything. By turning down those roles, Butterfly turned her back on fame and a steady paycheck. But she never turned her back on her dignity. She started over completely, working as a real maid, a seamstress, a department store clerk, even a taxi dispatcher. Whatever honest work she could find, she did it with quiet grace. She never married, never had children, and lived alone in a modest little cottage in Georgia, far from Hollywood's glimmer, but closer to peace. She wasn't destitute, yet she lived humbly, by choice and by circumstance. Then came tragedy. In 1995, at the age of 84, Butterfly's home caught fire after a kerosene heater accident. She died from her injuries, still living simply, still surviving on her own terms. And here's the twist most people never knew: Butterfly McQueen was a lifelong atheist. Even in death, she stayed true to herself, leaving part of her small estate to the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Butterfly's story is one of courage, conviction, and quiet rebellion. She may have stepped away from the silver screen, but she left behind a legacy brighter than fame, one built on integrity, independence, and the strength to live and die by her own beliefs. Madame Sultan. He looked up into her face and said, "Benz Adrina, I don't know who stuck that knife in my back, but if it was you, you sure done it delicate." That line came from the lips of a woman Hollywood tried to forget, but history never could. Meet Nellie Conley, known to the world as Madame Sultan, the first black woman ever to sign a Hollywood studio contract, long before sound, color, or equality made it to the screen. She was breaking barriers before most people even knew there were walls to break. Starting in 1915 with the birth of a nation, Sultana worked for over 7 decades, appearing in silent films, talkies, and early television. Yet despite her immense talent and undeniable presence, she was rarely given credit, literally. Her name was often missing from the screen. Hollywood's racism kept her trapped in the background, playing maids, nannies, or nameless extras while others rose to stardom. She gave her youth, her grace, and her art to an industry that refused to see her worth. While her white co-stars were buying mansions, Sultana struggled to pay rent. Hollywood used her face but ignored her humanity. By her later years, the woman who had helped shape movie history had no savings, no home, and no spotlight left. She spent her final days in the motion picture country home, a charity residence for actors who could no longer afford a place of their own. When she passed away there in 1959 at the age of 85, it was after a lifetime of unacknowledged work. Madame Sultana was a pioneer who opened the doors of Hollywood for generations of black actresses to come. Yet the cruel irony remains. While the industry she helped build became worth billions, she died in poverty. Her story is not one of failure, but of injustice, and a reminder that the foundation of Hollywood's golden age was built on the talent of those it refused to honor. Mantan Moreland, the forgotten king of laughter. What you doing in that lineup? Don't bother me, woman. Can't you see I've been a zombie? And don't ask me my name, 'cause I don't know. That quick wit and lightning timing could belong to no one else but Mantan Moreland, the undisputed king of comedy in the 1930s and 40s. With his wide-eyed expressions and machine gun delivery, Mantan could make an audience roar before he even finished a line. He appeared in dozens of films, most famously in the Charlie Chan series, always as the fast-talking sidekick who stole the scene. During his prime, he worked non-stop, making solid money, headlining vaudeville acts, and becoming one of Hollywood's most recognizable black comedians. His catchphrases became part of everyday speech, and his name meant laughter. But as the post-war years rolled in, the industry that once celebrated him turned its back. America's views on race and comedy began to shift, and the very roles that had made Mantan famous were now labeled offensive or outdated. The calls stopped coming. The curtain closed. Then tragedy struck again. A severe stroke in the early 1960s nearly ended his career. The man who had once made millions laugh now faced mounting medical bills and dwindling opportunities. He tried to make a modest comeback with guest spots on The Bill Cosby Show and a few other TV appearances, but Hollywood had already forgotten its clown prince. When Mantan Moreland passed away in 1973 at age 71 from a brain hemorrhage, his death barely made the papers. The man who had brought so much joy to Depression-era audiences died in quiet obscurity and poverty. It's heartbreaking how quickly fame fades, how an artist who shaped the language of comedy could be erased by time. Mantan Moreland didn't just tell jokes, he defined an era. He deserved far more than a footnote. He deserved to be remembered as the legend he truly was. Nina Mae McKinney, the forgotten Black Garbo. Nina Mae McKinney was once hailed as the Black Garbo, a title earned after her mesmerizing performance in the 1929 musical Hallelujah. She was radiant, magnetic, and utterly unforgettable, a natural-born star whose every movement demanded attention. For a brief, shining moment in the early 1930s, Nina Mae stood on top of the world as one of Hollywood's very first black leading ladies. But behind the glamour lay a cruel truth. In an era when black actresses were confined to maids, servants, or silent background roles, Hollywood had no real space for a woman of her brilliance. Nina Mae grew weary of the same tired stereotypes, so she made a daring choice. She walked away. Leaving the bright lights of America, she crossed the Atlantic to Europe, where audiences truly saw her talent, not her color. There, she graced stages and screens, earning the admiration that Hollywood had denied her. Yet, her boldness came at a price. By the time she returned to the US in the 1950s, Hollywood had moved on. The golden age that once embraced her had no room left for a forgotten pioneer. Divorced young, with no children and few opportunities, Nina Mae faded into obscurity, her brilliance dimmed by neglect. In 1967, at just 54 years old, the woman once called the Black Garbo died alone and penniless in a New York City hotel room. A star who had once illuminated the screen was left to fade in the shadows, a haunting reminder of how Hollywood's silence can erase even its brightest lights. Whitney Houston, the angel with the golden voice. "It's a feeling you can't describe," she once said. "It's like a surge of energy, like taking off and flying." Whitney wasn't just a singer, she was the voice. A once-in-a-generation talent whose sound could move heaven and earth. In the 1990s, she conquered both music and film, starring in blockbusters like The Bodyguard and Waiting to Exhale. At her peak, she was unstoppable, earning a jaw-dropping $100 million record deal in 2001, one of the biggest ever signed. Whitney lived like royalty, mansions, designer couture, luxury cars, and the dazzling aura of a true superstar. But behind the glittering image, there was pain. Whitney was fighting inner demons, struggles with addiction and chaos that no fame could silence. Her fortune began to vanish as quickly as it came. Lavish spending, poor financial advice, and desperation led her to borrow against future royalties, money she hadn't even earned yet. By the 2000s, her career was fading, but her lifestyle wasn't. The debts grew, the pressure mounted, and the woman who once ruled the charts found herself spiraling. When Whitney passed away in 2012 at just 48 years old, the world mourned not only her voice but the tragedy of her downfall. Shockingly, she died over $20 million in debt, a painful reminder that even the most gifted among us can lose everything. Yet, in death, her legacy rose again. Posthumous releases and renewed appreciation brought her estate back from ruin. Whitney's story stands as both an inspiration and a warning, proof that no amount of talent or fortune can save a soul lost in its own storm. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the price of perfection. When the news broke, the king of pop has died, the world froze. Michael Jackson, the man who redefined music, dance, and fame itself, was gone. From his dazzling debut in the Jackson 5 to Thriller, the most iconic music video ever made, Michael wasn't just an entertainer, he was a global phenomenon. Every move he made, every song he sang, reshaped pop culture forever. But behind the glittering gloves and moonwalk magic was a man caught in a storm of excess. Michael didn't just live large, he lived unreal. A private amusement park at Neverland Ranch, exotic animals, priceless art, lavish spending that blurred the line between fantasy and obsession. He earned hundreds of millions, yet spent it faster than it came in. And the cost wasn't just financial. Endless lawsuits, multi-million-dollar settlements, and unpaid taxes piled up until the numbers turned nightmarish. By the time he died in 2009 at just 50 years old, Michael Jackson, the most famous man on the planet, was reportedly over $500 million in debt. The tragic irony? In death, his empire finally rose again. His music catalogs, tribute shows, and posthumous releases made more money than he had ever seen in life. The king of pop became profitable only when his heartbeat stopped. Michael's story is more than fame and fortune. It's a cautionary tale. No matter how high you rise, reckless spending can bring anyone down. In the end, the man who gave the world Thriller became the ultimate example that even legends can go broke trying to live like gods. Billie Holiday, the woman they called Lady Day. Her voice wasn't just music, it was pain wrapped in silk. You could feel every heartbreak, every lonely night in the way she sang, "Hey there, baby, make up your mind." She wasn't just performing, she was confessing. Though best known as one of the greatest jazz singers to ever live, Billie also appeared in the 1947 film New Orleans, leaving a mark far beyond the microphone. Her style was raw, soulful, and unlike anyone before her, inspiring generations of artists who tried, but never quite captured her magic. Yet behind the applause was a world of cruelty. In the 1930s and 40s, while Billie was filling clubs and selling records, greedy managers and record companies were draining her earnings. It was a harsh reality for Black performers of her time: talent without protection, fame without fairness. Addiction tightened its grip on her, making her easy prey for those who used her weakness to take even more. By the time she realized what had been stolen, There was almost nothing left, except her voice, and even that was fading. In 1959, at just 44 years old, Lady Day lay dying in a hospital bed, handcuffed, under arrest for drug possession, with FBI agents posted at her door. The government was investigating her while she was taking her last breaths. When she passed, her bank account held just 70 cents, not even enough for a candy bar. The only money she had was $750 in cash, taped to her leg, hidden from the very people who'd stolen from her all her life. One of America's greatest musical icons, the woman who gave jazz its soul, died penniless and persecuted. Billie Holiday's story isn't just about tragedy. It's a haunting reminder of how brilliance can be exploited and how even legends can be left with nothing but their song. Marvin Gaye, the soul that couldn't escape his own pain. I write my music according to my life. If I'm sad, I write sad songs. If I'm in love, I write love songs. And if I'm getting divorced, I write divorce albums. Those words perfectly captured the spirit of Marvin Gaye, a Motown legend whose music bared his soul to the world. From What's Going On to Sexual Healing, his voice was velvet pain, turning heartbreak into poetry. But behind the smooth melodies and romantic lyrics was a man haunted by turmoil. Though he earned millions during his peak, Marvin's personal and financial life was collapsing. His bitter divorce left him owing his ex-wife $300,000 in unpaid alimony, the equivalent of over $1 million today. Worse still, the IRS came knocking. By 1984, Marvin owed roughly $1 million in back taxes. With pressure mounting, he fled to Europe, hoping distance could buy him peace. But debts, like demons, always find their way home. When he returned to the US, Marvin was living with his parents, struggling to rebuild both his finances and his sanity. Then, tragedy struck. On April 1, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, an argument with his father turned fatal. Marvin Gaye was gone, shot in the very home where he once sought refuge. At the time of his death, Marvin owed nearly $2 million. Ironically, it was the royalties from his timeless music, the very songs born from his pain, that would later clear those debts. A man who gave the world soul died broke, yet left behind melodies that will never fade. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard wasn't just another singer, she was the heartbeat of the Supremes, the group that redefined music history. In the early 1960s, Florence was living the dream, chart-topping hits, glamorous gowns, and the roar of thousands of fans who adored her. But behind the spotlight, a storm was brewing. In 1967, that dream came crashing down. Florence was forced out of the group she helped create, just as the Supremes were becoming global superstars. Imagine being pushed aside from your own legacy, watching others live the dream you built. After leaving, she tried to start a solo career, but the doors that once opened for her were now slammed shut. Depression, heartbreak, and alcoholism slowly crept into her life. By the mid-1970s, the once glittering star of Motown was struggling to survive in Detroit. A mother of 3, Florence was broke and desperate. She stood in welfare lines to feed her children, pawned her jewelry to pay rent, and lived on food stamps while her former bandmates still shined in the spotlight. The contrast was devastating, a living symbol of how cruel fame can be. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard died of a heart attack at just 32 years old, penniless, forgotten by the world she once dazzled. Her story is a haunting reminder that the music industry can make you a legend one moment and leave you with nothing the next. Which part of Florence's story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you never miss another untold story from music history.